We're talking about DevOps, really, and the idea about how you're bringing together your teams culturally and from a skills perspective, and what you've been doing and your journey. So just for everybody, we're going to give these guys a second to introduce themselves, the company that they work with, and tell us a little bit about what they've been doing. Just give you a forewarning, love to take questions from you all in the audience. So be thinking about those as these guys are kind of getting kicked off here. So, Tom?
Great. Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Clark, and I'm the head of Common Platform at ITV. ITV is a large kind of producer broadcaster in the UK. It's actually the largest commercial broadcaster we have. As head of Common Platform, I essentially run the team of platform engineers or DevOps engineers, about 18 of them now. And we're about 3 years into like a big DevOps kind of transition, migration. And recently I was kind of given the fun task by my boss to actually take all the Linux learnings we've done over the past 3 years and try and apply them to our Windows estate. So if I go gray, you'll understand why.
Tom Wollstonecroft, Corporate Vice President of Information Systems for New York Life. I've been with them for about 6 years. We're an insurance company that's been around for about 176 years now, I think. And so right now, when it comes to DevOps, we're a little bit more junior in our journey than you are. But I've been tasked with kind of helping get DevOps up off the ground, changing how we're doing things, and then bringing in the skill sets that are necessary for people to kind of pick this up in the company. Great. So, and we're in our big cloud phase as well, moving to that.
Excellent. So I did forget to mention, I am Sandy Hamilton, actually. And I lead our customer success organization at Puppet. I've been here now for about 7 months, so this is my first Puppet Conf. Very excited to be here, and thanks again, gentlemen, for joining us. So quick question as we're actually getting started for everybody, and they can be thinking about their questions. DevOps, 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 right? It can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. You both just said, hey, we're doing DevOps. What does that actually mean to you? How do you define DevOps if you have to articulate it?
I think that's kind of the problem. There are so many different definitions. It's like standards. The great thing about them, there's so many to pick from. But for us, it's about kind of collaboration and breaking down the barriers. A lot of people say it's automation and tooling, but we find those are kind of like second order things. It used to be dev and ops, and actually we found by getting smart people on the dev team and smart people on the ops team, and you rub them together in the same team, you get some really kind of good results. And actually, for some people at ITV, that was surprising. People like to work together, but we found some kind of really kind of greater outcomes from that. So it's the collaboration, it's the breaking down of the silos mainly for us at ITV.
Yeah.
It's all culture, right? It's entirely changing the culture from where everything traditionally was you kept your network guys over here, your storage guys over here, your operating system guys over here. Your developers were somewhere else, nobody actually talked to them. And then trying to change the culture to where everybody works towards a common goal as part of a common team, right? And so the biggest thing you have there in that team is trust. So for me, it's a culture and it's a trust.
So why did you actually feel like you had to get started on this journey, right? Like what was the deciding factor that said, hey, we have to go do this? I mean, was there something broken? Was it just, hey, DevOps is a cool thing, everybody's doing it, so we got to follow along and do it? Or what was really the impetus?
Well, at least for us, it was the changing technologies. And obviously there's business drivers. Every business wants to go in a new market to do new things, produce new things for their customers. But realistically, what we looked at the way technology was changing and the way people were consuming technology and said, okay, we have to adapt to what our customers want. Because if we didn't, we'd still be sending out insurance guys, door to door, knocking on everybody's door. So you have to adapt with the times. People don't want somebody randomly knocking on the door or calling them on the phone anymore.
And for ITV, we have many, many different kind of business divisions, some like back office, like kind of HR and legal, but we have a kind of a consumer-facing arm, like our online division, which is where our video-on-demand platform is based. And they are literally consumer-facing, and it's kind of a really growing part. As a broadcaster, people aren't tuning in to watch the scheduled TV anymore. They want to watch on demand. And we found that actually our online division, they were still caught up in the traditional corporate IT, dev and ops, waterfall-based, cab-based deployment. And they couldn't work quickly enough to satisfy the consumer kind of demand and changes. And so in that online division, we tried DevOps on a very, very thin slice MVP, and then fast forward about 4 years to where we are now, it's now kind of permeated across the whole of the business now. And actually, even the back office systems, they're kind of following a DevOps thing. But it's really a consumer-driven kind of thing. We had to satisfy the customers, or we'd die.
And you would say you've been working on this for 4+ years. I mean, that's a pretty long period of time. I mean, you said you were pretty immature in this, and
right.
In terms of where you guys have been going. But you would look back. Did you call it DevOps then?
Yeah, it was DevOps. Actually, I think I remember going to the first DevOps meetup in London. That was before I started at ITV. But it grew and became normal in the online division. And then the rest of ITV was starting this big IT modernization program. And the CTO had seen the success in online and said, okay, let's ditch waterfall. Let's kind of adopt Agile, let's adopt DevOps, and take a product team approach to the back office systems. And that's kind of actually when we took all that learning and actually applied it to more traditional enterprise IT. So the online bit was kind of done. It's taken about kind of 4 years end to end, but the past 2.5 years, I say, we're taking that learning to the back office, more traditional enterprise kind of approaches.
And Tom, how long have you guys been, embarking on this journey? What would you say?
About a year and a half,
Okay.
pretty close there. And it all started with our, the CEO, the CTO, all upper management saying, okay, we need to embrace a new culture. We need to embrace a new way of thinking. And that's where DevOps has to start, in my opinion. It doesn't start on a lower foundation if you're going in. It starts at a higher foundation. They set the culture, they set the goals, and if they're open and they're transparent and they decide what they want to do, it makes it nice and easy. And that kicked off about a year and a half ago.
We actually had it the other way around, actually. For us, it started as a grassroots, not shadow IT, but kind of like a grassroots movement where we had, we wanted to get the IT, well, it's called the ITV Hub, it's basically our VOD platform, onto the Samsung connected TVs so you can sit in it. We call it the 10-foot interface. You sit in your sofa 10 feet away from it. And the person who was running it wanted to try DevOps. He'd heard about it. And because it was a very thin slice, essentially greenfield development, and it was kind of almost like a throwaway prototype, he got the permission of that particular area's director to say, can we try this DevOps approach for this particular project just to see if it works? And he got the buy-in, and we put it onto AWS, the first time we'd ever used cloud. And what that did was prove in a very safe way that DevOps could work as an approach. And then eventually it grew through online, and eventually the CTO noticed, and it joined. It was top down and bottom up for us.
So this is what Sanjay was talking about, earlier during one of the keynotes, or during the keynote, which was around, we see a lot of companies that have success in one slice, right, in one area. How do you actually take that and really put that across your entire organization, which it sounds like you guys have had success starting this way and going across. You're trying to say, hey, how do we bridge that culture down? And I think it'd be great to hear, what are some of the early challenges that maybe you've had to overcome, and what does that look like for you?
Early challenge. I think the hardest one is whenever you're trying to change any culture, getting everybody on the same page and thinking the same way. We're technologists, so we have egos about ourselves and what we feel we know. We have our technology, preferences and prejudices. I like this one, not that one. So obviously, anything that goes against that is wrong. And then we have. We definitely don't. A lot of people in IT will actually take it personally when you say, "Okay, I don't prefer your solution. I prefer mine. I think it works better." And it's overcoming those things that is actually the biggest challenge, right? The technology part, realistically, is the easy bit. Honestly, it's the culture and getting everybody onto the same page and having everybody understand the benefits of doing it and why they want to do it. And getting them to say, "Okay, I'm all right with that."
Did you make any changes to sort of their goals, or I'll even go so far, incentives and compensation, to help sort of reinforce the importance of this? And has that had an impact in anything, if so?
Yes, but we did it as a team, right? So before it would be like individual contributor things, and that doesn't really set up the culture of working together as a team and not just working to make yourself better. So we had to set the goals and the incentives on a team level and not an individual level.
Okay. Yeah. And broadly the same at ITV. We found as the pace of change has increased, kind of the requirement for more alignment between the various business divisions and business areas has increased as well. A lot of it has kind of happened just through serendipity. People haven't been told to be better. They've actually said we need to find a standard. We need to come up with an approach. So actually we found a lot of people have kind of self-organized, and it's kind of worked well for us.
Great. Let me ask each one of you all one more question, and then we'll kind of maybe try and get some folks from the audience to participate here. You know, how long have you been using Puppet, and how are you using it to help achieve some of your objectives that you've got?
So I've been using Puppet, I think, since 2010, so quite a long time ago, and that was some pretty basic kind of usage there. Actually, if I look back at some of my old manifests, which I definitely didn't take when I left that job, you know, it's kind of pretty shocking. But actually now at ITV, it drives like our kind of entire way of working. You know, so we have about 16 product teams now running on the common platform I mentioned, and the way we define like the ITV way of working is through Puppet modules. So we've kind of, you know, we define there, but we've got Puppet testing pipelines for all of them. You know, we treat them as if they were like Forge quality modules. So we've got Puppet testing pipelines. We release with Semver. We've got good documentation there, and all the teams kind of pull them in. Like, yeah, we definitely couldn't do what we do every day without kind of Puppet at the core.
For me, I've been playing with it on my own, but for a while, I guess probably since about 2012, maybe 2011. Well, I brought it into New York Life maybe 4 years ago now. And we started out really small. It was the very first thing we did was because nobody really knew what I was trying to do with it, right? Everybody was just kind of like, what do you mean configuration management? Why are we doing this? And why are we spending this money? And so I mostly did some small things with it, managed like the message of the day file and NTP. I think those were the two things I started out with, like really
The important stuff first.
The important stuff bit. I mean, and then I went around and I had to sell it to all the other engineers and all the other application teams and everything to say, hey, look what we're doing. And I remember I did presentations and I went around and I put Muppets all over it. Because anytime anybody would talk to anybody about Puppet, they'd be like, what do you mean, like Kermit the Frog? I'm like, no. So just to get it out of the way, every slide had Muppets on it. But then slowly, as people started getting on board, the team built up, and we started really automating all of the platform, and we were able to take our core on-premises environment, which would take like sometimes weeks to deploy a stack, we got it down to a couple hours.
Awesome.
To where we were able to say, okay, we want this, and then we were able to actually deliver it fully built and realized.
Awesome.
So, and that's been, like I said, about a 4-year journey.
Great. Let's see if anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask Tom and Tom. And like I said,
We're going with Tom
really
Squared.
easy.
Tom Squared.
Please. Would you have a microphone? Thanks, Michael. Maybe.
I want to talk about how you all address the skills gap. I'm in an environment right now where we are moving from on-premise data center and moving all of our services and things like that into AWS. So with that comes an entirely new tech stack, new skills to learn, things like that. And we actually brought in a third party because the powers that be kind of wanted to move quickly. Yeah. And so we brought in a third party to do most of the heavy lifting. A couple of the engineers kind of looked over their shoulders to kind of see what was happening. But there are still some engineers who got left back because we still have day-to-day work that we have to tend to. And now there's this skills gap where most of the skills have been acquired by the engineers that were there, and now a lot of us have to catch up. So can you kind of explain a little bit about maybe how you all address this?
Do you want to start, then I'll follow?
Sure, why not? For me, the biggest thing, I think that's pretty much a common use case across the board, is a lot of people are seeing this kind of fundamental shift. For me and the people that I work with, lab environments were the most important thing. The ability to have a safe space to go and test and do whatever they want, and they could not actually break anything that was actually doing real work, right? And giving them the time and saying, okay, here's the information. We know you couldn't go, you couldn't attend the training, you couldn't attend the conferences, everything like that. Here's what we have for you, here's your environment, and go. And let them experiment, because IT people, we like to geek out, and if you give us an area and we're like, hey, this is awesome, I can get to go play, I think that's where you'll find a lot of the skills can pick up, and then probably pick up pretty quickly.
Yeah. I mean, I was actually quite lucky in the way it happened with ITV, because actually, as part of building the platform, we actually were insourcing it from a managed service provider. So actually, I didn't have to kind of bring many people across from the old world. I was able to hire a new team. But the way I've seen it done in the past, actually, you've got a third party and you needed to move quickly, and often your leadership team really wants you to move quickly. Without understanding the people side, they get left behind. But now I suppose the question is, if you've still got the money and the kind of the input from the leadership team to seed people into those older teams to actually act as mentors to train them and help them up, because otherwise they will get left behind and then they feel bad. I mean, ultimately we're talking about change, and the way I always break change down into is there's 20% who are like, yeah, and there's 60% who are like, yeah, and there's 20% like, nah. And there's always going to be that back 20, and don't spend all your time concentrating on the people who don't want to change. If you can get that middle 60, you've got 80%, then either get with the program or leave. You have to accept there will be some people who won't go with you. But it's working out what support you give them. And I think I've seen it done in other companies. Get a consultant and embed them in the team. Don't make them do the work, but let them coach and pair with those people and bring them up. And if they're really not interested in kind of coming up to the level you need, then work out where they may need to go. It's a bit harsh, but it's...
Well, no, I think that's really well said, though. I mean, that's what it is, because everybody's ultimately responsible for themselves, right? You have to want to embrace the change, right? And you have to be willing to take the extra steps in order to grow that. We didn't get an IT because it was a stagnant field where we never had to learn anything else. You're always going to have to learn. You're always going to have to grow, and people have to be willing to do that, or else you're, like you said, you're part of that back 20, and then decisions have to be made.
Yeah, and I think actually in terms of the way we hire, I mean, at ITV, the methodology I've been using, and this sounds kind of a bit of a buzzwordy thing, but there's only 2 qualities that I'm looking for. You've got to be smart and you've got to be kind. Like anything else is gravy, it's a bonus. So I say smart is the ability to adapt to change. Tech's always changing, and the tech we use today won't be the tech we use tomorrow. So I don't care if you know Nginx or you know AWS. Can you move for the times? And then kind, I say, is the ability to fit into my team. Essentially, you kind of like don't be a douche. I mean, don't, can I say that? I just did, sorry.
Well, no,
we can beep that out, I'm sure, on the video. But don't make room for those brilliant jerks. They may have off the scale IQs, but if they don't go and fit into your team and they're not willing to share what they know and they're kind of like doing this with all their knowledge, they're not worth it. They're deleterious. They're actually a negative, toxic influence on the team. So that's what I do. I hire smart and kind. I've hired some not crazy people, but people who didn't fit the mold, but they've turned into my best engineers because they were so driven to kind of become brilliant. And the great thing I've found about kind of like smart people, they breed smartness. If you're surrounded by smart people and you feel you're one nudge beneath everyone else, you want to get better. So yeah, smart and kind.
So have you found that there's a different pool of candidates that you're drawing from that you maybe didn't used to before?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's also to your point, your interview process now is entirely different, right? It used to be where we would sit down, and I think probably most of us has done it, where you sit in front of like a panel of like 4 people from the company you're interviewing with, and they fire off all the most obscure questions possible.
What's
right?
the syntax for this command?
Absolutely, yeah. What does the -K flag mean, and this command versus that one, and all that stuff. But now it's like when we interview and when we hire, it's more of like an open conversation, right? I go in, I don't have any set questions anymore, other than tell me about yourself, right? And that's it. And then seeing if they're going to be a culture fit, right? A big one, whether or not they're going to work well with the guys we have, what their strengths seem to be, right? Because obviously, if we're hiring for a position where they have to be out in front of it and they're trying to evangelize for us, we don't want to, then putting somebody who is more withdrawn would not really be a good fit. So trying to determine what their strengths are, and then can they learn?
Yeah.
Right? Do they seem intelligent enough to be able to pick it up?
Yeah. Which is difficult to gauge in an interview without running loads of psychometric tests and stuff. But actually, you can get a vibe for people. Right. And interviewing like a maybe is a no. Like if you're not like yeah, it's like well if you're like I guess they'll do the job. It's like is that the person you want on your team?
Right.
Right.
But you also get a lot of pressure from above to make that hire, put that bum on a seat. And it took me 2.5. So I've got 18 engineers now. It's taken me more than 2.5 years to fill all those. So, which is.
And out of curiosity, right? I get this question a lot. What do you call those people, right? So what's their title that you give them, and how important is that to them, and how important is that to the culture that you're trying to create?
So the title we use is platform engineer at ITV, and we kind of have grades from junior all the way up to principal. And that's not based upon experience. I think one of my seniors has kind of got less experience than one of my kind of mid-level engineers. But it's all, HR want me to have these really tight boxes to define people, and I just kind of refuse to play that game. So platform engineer is the term we use. It's the common platform. They are common platform engineers, and that's the only title we've got.
Similar solution engineers. It's, we don't really advertise anything or call anybody DevOps engineers. I'm not a fan of that term at all. to me, that's missing the point. It'd be like working in an agile environment and calling myself an agile engineer.
Yep.
It's not really
Yep.
my right thing. So solutions engineers.
Good. Any other questions?
Hi, so Sanjay talked a lot about needing to speak the language of business and that convincing people like you can't speak the language of IT, you need to speak the language of business. And I'm curious if you've done that, and if you have, what did you do and what do you think made that successful?
So, I mean, I see my particular role as kind of like head of the platform is to be a translator, up, down, and to the side. That's kind of where I see my particular position. And I embed platform engineers in the product teams around the business. I mentioned we had the 5 main business divisions. Inside those business divisions are product development teams, the classic Jeff Bezos 2 pizza thing, like about 10 people. And those platform engineers are embedded in those teams, and the product owner of those teams is often someone from the business. And I'm trying to get people to stop saying the business. It's our business. It's not like kind of them and us, actually. It's all one part of the organization. And that's taking time because it's just that verbal muscle memory. But just by being close, and I'll say it, to the business, they understand the domain more, they understand the language, they understand when they're talking about sales, to use the right language of sales, the same in our studios division as well, same in broadcast. So you learn it because you are much closer to the people involved, and that makes the conversations much easier. And vice versa as well. The people on our business side, in broadcast and studios and shared services, they're learning our language as well. So when we're in a conversation, we're talking about kind of setting priorities and we're kind of working on sprint planning, they can understand why we're doing this particular kind of like a AMI deployment or whatever it may be. So I think it's a side effect, a lovely side effect of like bringing the two sides closer together.
Yeah, I mean, agreed. It's to kind of make fun of myself. I remember when I first did the Puppet presentations and I started bringing them around to the CTO, the CIO. I was like, hey, look at all this great Puppet code we can do, and look, everybody can read it, and it's awesome, and yay, and I'm going to be. And within 5 minutes, their eyes glossed over, right? So one of the big changes that I had to do was learn to say, okay, I can't talk about that anymore. It doesn't make any sense. I have to talk about it. What are the benefits? What is it going to do for the business? How is New York Life going to gain and be better by doing this versus not doing it? And so putting things in those perspectives was personally, it was a change because I was used to being very technical. Yeah. And having to step away from that was one area that was tough for me.
Mm-hmm. I come from a software development background, so actually I always think in terms of abstraction, and I think what you're saying there is actually you abstract actually kind of the detail away from it, and you can sum it up in a nice kind of nugget of useful information that they can kind of take away and say, oh good, that makes me more profitable, or that means I can deliver more quickly. Right. They don't need to know about the detail.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. Yep, agreed.
Absolutely. We have a question over here. I'm like getting blown over by this wind over here, just for the record.
Hi. So you had mentioned that you have platform engineers embedding with other divisions. Are you keeping some percentage of your platform engineers working on like the core platform stuff, or what is that ratio like?
Yeah, great question. So I kind of operate a hub and spoke model, and actually this was really difficult to persuade kind of the exec team to give, because they said, what value are they kind of delivering? I said, actually, the common platform itself is a product that I offer to the rest of the business. So I have 2 permanent platform engineers, and they're some of my most senior engineers, my principal and one of my other seniors, and they are in the middle, kind of a center of excellence, but I don't really like that term. And they are the kind of curators of the common platform itself. So the Terraform modules, the Puppet modules, the best practice, they're working on that, and they're stealing what they see from the rest of their teams, bringing it into the center, then pushing back out again. It's always a useful kind of like flex resource. So if one person's going to be on vacation, or they're ill, or whatever, because the common platform is so common, they can actually be subbed in for a week or something and cover it. And within a few hours or something, they're up to speed, even though they'd never seen that particular product team before. So yeah, we do have this kind of this core team who are responsible for that kind of the heavy R&D. Containers, for example, we're looking at containers in production finally, and rather than getting a product team who probably don't, it's difficult to sell the product owner on 6 months worth of R&D into containers in production. They don't see the benefit, but that core team, the common platform is their product, so they can spend 3 months, 6 months R&Ding all the schedulers, working out what the best tool is, building the tech, and then sharing it out with all the rest of the embedded engineers.
Nice.
I think it's a question that a lot of people have had as well, which is, you just started talking about how your team is organized, right? How is your overall team kind of structured and organized, and has that changed over time as you've started to, really go on this journey of, kind of more towards DevOps?
Well, we're actually, it sounds like we're adopting something very similar to yours, where we have a core team. We have right now, like let's say the cloud services team, right? Mm-hmm. And they're just focused on driving and the governance and everything behind the cloud. But then we're going to be matrixing in members into our lines of business, into our product teams, to say, okay, you're solely focused on this product team, that's it, but then you have to align with what we're doing and what we're setting. So instead of having, like previously, where you had all your Linux engineers and they just did all the Linuxy bits, right? These guys, they're solely focused on whatever that line of business needs to do, and then they're just aligned with us. So this way, if we change governance or we change things, they can align and they can make sure that line of business is following in line with us.
Interesting. In terms of reporting lines, so they report into kind of so I'm head of common platform. All the platform engineers report to me, even though I basically give them out to the business. Do they report into you, or do they are more aligned with their particular product teams? Because then I found, well, sorry.
No. I was going to just answer that before you go on. Right now, they're going to be reporting to us, but aligned to them. So if you want to talk about what their priority list and all that, it's mostly going to come from them.
Yep.
Right? It's we're just going to provide in the feedback that we need and kind of that, and they'll still be part of like a team meeting. They'll still understand what we're doing in our sprints and everything like that. But their priority list will be coming from them.
Got it. And then we had a question over here. Oh, okay.
That's good. My telepathy's working now.
Yes.
Excellent.
It's efficient, man.
Skills. So with your sort of platform engineers that are embedded with the engineering groups, do they actually sit with the engineering groups? Like, is your office area basically you and your two core guys, and they go, "Where's the rest of your department?"
Yeah, pretty much. Slack, I'd normally say. But yeah, so yeah, basically they are literally in the teams. They attend stand-ups. They go to sprint planning. They go to the retros, and a percentage of their time is common platform time, independent of their product teams. And I'm proud to say they all identified like common platform first. But the best way I've heard it described was from Alison on my team. She says she considers herself a citizen of the common platform, but an ambassador for it in that product team. So her best, her allegiance, I guess, is to me in the common platform. But she's there to make the biggest success of the common platform for the product team she's in as she possibly can. So she's like an ambassador for it. So we do have various bits of kind of platform ceremony, like kind of a weekly meeting for common platform engineers and a monthly day when we get together as a group. But 80%, 90% of our time, they are actually, I can't tell them what to do. I mean, ultimately, obviously I can, and that's one of the things I was saying before, that if a product owner isn't prioritizing some of the platform tasks, kind of like whether it's security patching or whatever, ultimately I can push that red button and just tell my engineers to do that, but I've never had to do it because everyone understands the kind of the two-way relationship, the symbiosis that we get.
Brother, I'm totally stealing that ambassador line. I'm straight up stealing that.
Good.
Any other questions out there right now?
So you mentioned you used Puppet to achieve your goals. What I'd like to understand is what role has Puppet as a company, not a technology, done to help you be successful in addressing the skills gap?
So for us, it was, they got us up off the ground. We had an engineer, Josh Beard, very nice guy, came in. I don't think he's actually with Puppet anymore, but he's a fantastic guy. And he came in and he helped get us up off the ground and get us moving in the right direction. And then we were actually able to reach out to Puppet on several occasions and say, okay, this is what I'm doing, here's what I'm trying to accomplish, am I on the right road? And they would kind of guide us and say, yeah, you're thinking about this right, no, you're not thinking about that right, maybe you want to adjust and change and go in this direction more. And they really kind of helped out. And the overall community, Puppet, whether or not it's been people that actually work for Puppet or just the community itself, have been huge. I know, Gary and I have had a lot of conversations with Gary, and he's helped me out quite a bit. And then I'm not trying to be a shill, but their classes were also really good too. We did a number of their classes, and they were always very informative and always kind of, every time anybody who went and took one of the classes always walked out and said, I didn't know I could do that. Like, well, all right, now let's make it go.
I'm really happy because I have the customer education team. Thank you for that.
Oh, awesome. All right, see?
The money's in the envelope later.
Right. That was,
Thank you for that. How about you?
Yeah, I think for ITV, a lot of the engineers I started out with, they were kind of Puppet experts kind of from the get-go. And so I'm probably going to get kind of sniped if I say this, but we actually run the open source version of the enterprise version, sorry. And so, but we still kind of have a good relationship kind of with the kind of with the team. We've had like Nick, Nigel, and Andy kind of in. We've had kind of good meetings. They like what we've done. That's how I got invited here. And we're kind of just keeping the lines of communication open. And we're not adverse to enterprise. I think when we kind of see it solves a load of our problems for us, then we'd definitely push the button. So.
Yeah, and what did you think about the announcements earlier today?
I know, like I said, I was on my phone slacking to my team in the UK. Even though it's past their bedtime, they were kind of watching, and they've already kind of been messing around with it. Actually, my phone's been kind of buzzing all day, so it's they're excited.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's hard not to be excited about it. So it's looking forward to going back and seeing how we can leverage it.
Yep.
Right, great stuff. Another question.
So when it comes to culture, there's always communication involved in that. And so I want to ask a question about one of the most beloved things in IT, which is documentation. So what's your approach to documentation?
My approach to documentation, it's really funny you're asking me this question. My approach is, it's one of those things that I'm not necessarily fond of the act of doing it, to be frank, but it has to be done for the betterment of the team, right? Because everybody has to know what's going on, and everybody has to be able to jump in and say, okay, I have to do whatever this is. So documentation is really the best way to do that, right? Because village level knowledge doesn't really work in IT anymore, right? You have to share everything. That feedback loop that you have to generate inside of a team is massively important, and documentation is a big key of that.
So we try to short circuit it by standardizing. So again, putting the common in the common platform, because we've got that core team producing those core modules and the 16 instances of the common platform. Actually, this scared my boss when I told him. They said there isn't a common platform, there are 16 of them. Every product team has an independent, individual instance of the platform, all separated. But because they're all derived from the same Puppet modules, Terraform modules, etc., that core team does the documentation. As long as you're based on those modules, it's familiar, it's common, and most of the time, once you're up to speed with the entire thing. Now, the products we host, obviously, they vary. And so from a platform engineering perspective, each of my team members has a kind of a mandate, so that if you are the platform engineer for this particular product, you must produce a document in roughly this format that explains what your product is, where the monitoring for it, actually even the monitoring endpoints are standardized actually, who the product owner is, any kind of gotchas, what the working hours are, basically a cheat sheet. If I'm the on-call engineer and I hit this product cold, do I need to care that it's actually kind of going down at this time of the day? Beyond that, there's kind of a mandate to write clean code, comment stuff, add tests, because I don't want my team writing reams and reams of documentation that's instantly out of date. And so we do a lot of peer review, and actually we try to write as kind of a good a quality code as we can. And given the level of team or kind of seniority I have in my team, they can read a Puppet manifest, they can read a config, they can read Hyrule and say, yep, I understand what this is doing. I don't need a separate doc to keep in line with it. So again, the benefits of standardization, that's a whole other talk I could do and have done actually on the advantages of it. So.
Yeah, standardization. Yeah. How do you, just out of curiosity, in that line, do you actually have deltas across any of your instances of the common platform? And then how do you make sure if somebody's new coming on the team, like if you hired me and I'm coming on, how am I brought up to speed then on not only the platform but then the delta?
Yep. So each of the Terraform modules and Puppet modules, they are all individually versioned and released through GitHub and pipelines. So it's all like Semver, and the common platform itself is versioned. So you can say if you're on version X of the common platform, you need to be at least minimum version X and Y of these Puppet and Terraform modules. And there's a mandate basically, that 20% time I mentioned, keeping up, part of that is keeping up with the Puppet module releases, the Terraform modules releases, because like standardization is great, but not if everyone has to upgrade at the same time. So loosely coupled, highly aligned, do that with versioning. So everyone's kind of broadly within a few months of the changes. And going back to the core team I mentioned before, if you're a new hire, you go into the core team for your first week, and actually you come up to speed, and you get your laptop set up, you get all your kind of tooling done, and you're distracting the core team when you've got those stupid questions that everyone has, and then you're told to update the documentation because it should have been there. But when you hit your product team, you're maybe not running, but you're crawling at a decent speed, so you're not kind of slowing everyone down with the silly questions. So so that's how we handle them.
Very cool.
Got it. Over here? couple over this way.
So I'm very interested in your platform team and your strategy. You have teams that embed 18 engineers or 16 if you have two in the office, and they go out and sit with other teams. Is this sort of organized around like 2-week sprints, or are they permanently embedded, or is it just to achieve a set of goals? And how do you then, I assume it's to affect a transformation. You know, DevOps pitfall number one is doing automation for other teams. So how well have you seen adoptions from the teams in which you have embedded?
So they're permanently embedded, and the whether it's Kanban or Sprint, that's up to the product team to decide, but they'll be permanently embedded. If I'm totally honest, I think the aspiration is they shouldn't be there. You know, we should eventually get the platform to the state where, you know, it doesn't require a platform engineer to babysit them. And that's because a lot of the developers we had who were moved into these product teams, they'd never been close to production before. You know, they weren't thinking about exponential backoff. They weren't thinking about logging and monitoring, all those kind of things. And so we were there as coaches to sit with them and say, you know, exponential backoff is quite useful because when this happens, it'll auto-recover. Online, so the consumer-facing division, more and more now, the platform engineers kind of like twiddling their thumbs because adding a new microservice, that's a line of hire and you know, another bit of kind of config, and it's up and running. They don't need a platform engineer for common tasks. At the other end of the spectrum, we've got other divisions, I shan't name, get told off, who are further behind on the maturity spectrum, and they require a lot more hands-on guiding because they aren't on the same kind of position on the spectrum. But yeah, so they've embedded the teams, and actually their responsibility is to try and get the team up to the point where they're no longer required to be there day to day.
Do you see any benefit from trying to spread that knowledge, make it more global, or you want to keep this automation with Puppet or whatever sort of on this, I'll call it an SRE team, but I mean...
So in terms of, I mean, all of the platform is kind of common across the entire business. That horizontal stripe is common. The layer above me, it goes back to kind of the separation concerns thing. The layer above me, the application layer, I have good relationships with the various kind of development heads, but there's not a huge amount of coordination, or there's not as much coordination as I have at my platform tier at the dev layer. So actually, we're basically kind of having to teach each product team and bring them up to speed independently. I think there should be a kind of a head of development at the tier above who can actually make sure that learning is kind of circulated more. But that's kind of like not my area. So.
Well, yeah, and we're actually approaching that a slightly different way. Isn't where we're partnering with our application owners, right? Those the automation of the applications, everything like that. We're leaving the application experts, right? You know, coming more from an infrastructure standpoint, we're not the experts on the app. So we're actually partnering with them. We're giving them their Puppet environment. We're working with them to write their modules, write their tasks, whatever they need to do, and spreading that knowledge out across the company. Yeah. Ideally, I would think that you would want, whether it's your junior guy who's coming in or your top application developer, to be able to work in the same tools, the same tool sets, writing all the same code, and working together in that. To me, that's a core part of DevOps, is that merge right there, and the sharing of knowledge across not just our platform, but everything.
Everyone. Yeah.
Yep.
I got a question over here.
You mentioned incentives towards working towards a team, like more teamwork and closing the gaps. What are those incentives?
Well, I mean, at ITV, it was actually just kind of a lot of the good people just kind of wanted to work better. In terms of the tech stack, it was kind of like pushing against an open door, because the old kind of managed service provider approach, where you had 4-week lead times of firewall changes, and you know, deployments took a long time and often failed. The kind of the alternative we were offering with like a DevOps approach was like so attractive. I couldn't keep them away actually. And when I first started the platform on AWS, I think I went 4 times over my budget from the finance department, and they told me off because you can't upset the finance people. And I said, well, it's not my fault. You asked me to make a platform that people liked, and they liked it. So I mean, in terms of incentivizing it, you know, it kind of comes down partly to the hygiene factors like salary, but that's just a hygiene factor, you know. It's such a competitive market right now, it's way more than that. And something I'm trying to, and having some success now at ITV, is actually building a culture. You know, it's kind of, everyone's talking about it, but what does it actually mean? Now we're trying to actually make some positive changes where, you know, it's not all about delivery, it's actually about the individual, and you make the individual happy, and actually the delivery benefits as a side effect.
And I think once people start seeing the changes in the way the teams work, people want to work on teams that work well together, right? You want to work with a group of people that are working all towards the same common goals. They're trying to accomplish the same things. and where you have that open feedback, where everybody can talk and there's no real ego. And when people see that, I think they gravitate towards that.
Yeah.
That's where they want to be, right? So that's part of the incentive is like, because if you're happier at work, everything gets, everything that translates everywhere
And
else.
if they don't, you have to wonder why. I mean, like,
Right.
maybe they're the back 20 I was talking
Yeah, I was
about.
going to
before.
say
there
the
you go,
20%
yeah.
you're talking about. So we're gonna wrap it up here real quick, but I'd like to just have one final thought from each of you, which is around what have been, if you had to point to one or two like achievements that you have seen that you would go talk to the rest of the company about or tell your peers about and talk to folks about, right? What are kind of the 1 to 2 highlights that you would say, hey, this is what we got from all these initiatives that we've put in place? What would those things be?
I think.
No, I was going to say that's a tough question. Go ahead. No.
I think from a pure tech perspective, I think kind of one of my biggest kind of successes, I guess, and this is from pure tech thing, not the whole business case side, was a new hire started on the Monday, embedded into the core team. They'd never seen our tech stack, well, our particular version of the stack. He'd seen the tools before, and by the end of that week, using the automation we'd developed, he was able to build and develop an entire instance of the common platform. So this is logging, alerting, monitoring, deployment, secure MI, multiple environments, the entire stack, basically ready for the application team to move in by the end of his first week. And then he joined the app product team he was meant to be with the week after and said, hello, I'm Adrian, this is my first day with you. Your platform is ready.
Awesome.
And that's just like, there was a lot of investment into automation, but building that and doing the Terraform and the Puppet, all the kind of components would have taken months previously, like months and months and months of like just hand rolling this stack. And through investment from the core team, it took, or really from a newbie, it took a week, and we can do it in a few hours now. And that means like we can hit the ground, kind of straight away.
That's great.
So I think that's the biggest tech win. There's a load of business ones as well, but I think that's kind of the biggest tech win for me.
Yeah, it's going to sound like I'm repeating you, but yeah, it's something similar. Just being able to go from, having a month or 3-week deployment time when it came to an environment for an application to use to a couple hours was the biggest thing. And when you go and from a business perspective and you're talking to the heads of the company who have always been very supportive and everything like that, but when you actually show them the real time that was saved and the real effort that was saved, and their eyes open up even more than they were before, like, wow, this is fantastic. It's those things.
Time is money.
Right, and it enables so much other, you do so much other things and it help the business so much more.
Yep.
Well, I want to thank both of you for joining our panel today. Appreciate your time here and for coming to PuppetConf. And thank you to everyone who joined the session today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your time here over the next day and a half or so. So thank you very much, and I hope you all have a great time.
Thanks, guys.